Hey, ladies and gents, welcome to the Controlled Interest Gamecast, where we talk about video games and everything happening in the industry. Episode 252. I'm your host, Jerrad Wyche. As always, I'm joined by my co-host, Dominic Orlando.
Hmm. It's Thursday. It's Friday, rather. And I have nothing clever prepared to say as a first line. So you're just going to get this babbling instead.
Well, based on one of the things we talked about right before we started recording, I thought you were going to go with war. War never changes.
That would have been good. I can't quite do, a good
Ron
Ron
Perlman.
Perlman.
Yeah.
But yeah, that would have been a good one. I'll practice for next week. Maybe that can be how we lead off.
I read once that he suffers from, I don't know if it's gigantism or it's the medical defect where somebody's like lower jaw never stops growing. And that's why, like, as he's gotten older, he starts to look more and more like a gorilla. Like, he's just like a physically imposing man. Obviously, shout out to Hellboy and Ron Perlman's voice. Um, one thing I wanted to mention: we were gonna do, we're gonna review our predictions for the year. That was originally the plan. But based on all the news we got this week, I figured we just kick that can down the road and probably do that at the end of the year instead of doing an 8-month check-in. Just because there's a bunch of stuff to talk about today, and with Gamescom happening next week, and then another event happening soon that we're going to talk about in this episode, we can just wait till the end of the year. It's no biggie, because a lot of that stuff is like Metacritic predictions and all of that, so we'll see how it ends up turning out. But speaking of Ron Perlman and War Never Changes, the first thing I wanted to talk about here, Dom, is some set photos from Vault 32, which is the vault that the upcoming Fallout TV series is taking place, have leaked. Really cool stuff. We talked about it right before the show of how it's managing to capture the feeling of a Fallout game, and that's always one of the weird things when you think about adaptations. I think more so in video games than books, in the sense that there's going to be a direct one-to-one comparison visually, right? Because if it's a novel and it hasn't been adapted yet, people are adapting that on the way they see the book was written, and not like, oh, this is how this looks, this is how it should look in live action. The photos feature, I want to go over them and I want to get your total take on everything. It features the outside of the vault. There's like a weird barn house, which is very interesting, that we can get into of what that means for the actual vault. And then we get to see pictures from inside the vault. There's like a nursery in there, which is very reminiscent of any of the beginnings of Fallout games. Most notably, was it 4 that had the nursery? Or was
Yes, for sure.
I always get yeah. Okay.
I think in 3 there might also be, because you do start off technically as a baby in that game, but in 4 it's there's a nursery. It's not even in the vault, actually. You're in an actual house.
True, yeah. And then there's also, well, that's the funny thing, is because the nursery image reminds me of Fallout 4, but then the other image where it shows like a disheveled classroom reminds me of Fallout 3. Because at the beginning of that game, you do the GOAT exam or whatever it's called.
Yep.
Do you remember?
Yeah.
So really cool. Like I said, it's awesome to see the Fallout world and the vaults in real space and see an actual set. What did you think about these photos, and what details can you glean that you think that maybe, they might be doing this with the vault at all from the images?
So in general, yeah, it looks super authentic. It does look just like the game, especially these ones inside the vault, in that nursery. Yeah, it feels exactly like how the game feels. I don't know, the way the windows are super, deep and rounded off between the rooms in the vault and everything. And there's a lot of like there's furniture thrown around. And like this vault looks like it got, trashed basically. So we can assume that we're obviously going to be in the vault and then also not in the vault. So that, something's going to happen in typical Fallout fashion where we're rushing out of this vault. But I'm not sure, because I did try to look up, does Vault 32, was that ever used in any of the games? And I didn't find anything. So maybe I just need to look harder. But
The closest vault was Vault 34, is what I found.
Yeah, that's what I saw. So maybe they're doing something original with the vault, or something non-specific. Because obviously, like, different vaults have different things going on. Some were experiments, and some are just people living, and so on, and all sorts of wild stuff. So otherwise, I don't know. Nothing really sticks out necessarily. I just do get the vibe of Fallout 3 kind of a situation where, people were clearly living peacefully in this vault for some time, and even having children, obviously, and then they weren't, based on what I observed earlier, that there's furniture thrown around in one of the photos and that kind of thing. So will it be the same Liam Neeson kind of setup from Fallout 3 where, he goes out to find water and gets in a disagreement with the overseer and all that? Who knows? But yeah, I don't know what other details could be
So
hints. The barn stuff I don't understand at all. That could be anything, right?
well, yeah, but so obviously we know from Fallout that every vault has like it's an experiment, right? Every vault is an experiment to some extent. We just don't know it most of the time until it's too late, unfortunately, for the people in the vault, not necessarily the main character you're playing as. But with this, because it's a farmhouse outside, I wonder if these people inside are being trained to be the people who cultivate the land following the nuclear fallout. And maybe
Sure.
that's the thing. And maybe when you come out, that is kind of the base of the shows. It's people surviving on a farm or a homestead, and they slowly explore the world around them type thing. Because obviously with setting 2, we don't know necessarily that just because in these photos the barn set is right in front of the Fallout gate, that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be that close when they film the show. They could be separate sets that they're holding together in this warehouse when they actually shoot. It might be different, right? We don't know that yet. But from what it looks like, I do think that that's going to be a prime thing to this, is that when they come out of the vault, there's going to be some sort of farming or homestead aspect to it. And when you
Mm-hmm.
think about from a TV show perspective, that lends a lot of ground for, character development and relationships, and then having a base where you can go out and then come back to. I am curious to see what the actual like sole plot of the show is, but my biggest, I wouldn't even say concern, but interest was seeing how well they could adapt the aesthetic of Fallout into live action, and they're nailing it. So I'm stoked for that.
And honestly, like, that's among many things. The aesthetic is one of my favorite parts of Fallout, of the game. So like, and I think a lot of people share that too, right? Because it's that weird, we're stuck in the 50s, but it's a post-apocalypse, all that kind of stuff. I don't know, that's just such a big part of the allure of Fallout, and they're nailing that here. Obviously, there's going to be more to it. Like, how do they give us, the kind of sense of exploration and outside the vault and all the different wacky stuff that can
Well,
happen.
all the sci-fi elements, right? Like the sci-fi
Yep.
guns and the mutants and all of that stuff. That's like much more than what you'd expect from like a post-apocalypse where it's like just humans trying to survive. It's like all these sci-fi elements that really add to it. Um, I am excited about Jonathan Nolan running the show. He runs Westworld, and funny enough, that's a show that's basically you take very futuristic concepts. I don't want to spoil the show for anybody who hasn't seen it. There's very futuristic concepts in that show, but it's presented, at least in the first season of the show, as a Western, right? If that makes sense. So, in the
Mm-hmm.
same way, you're presenting something that's very old fashioned and basic and Western adjacent, but there's all of these futuristic sci fi elements that you also have to add in there. And I believe this is an Amazon show, right? I
Yeah.
believe it's Amazon. And boy, howdy, if you've seen the budget that they put into the Lord of the Rings show, not saying this will have the same budget, but Amazon isn't afraid to put budget into their shows. Heck, you even look at something like The Boys, that it also has a really good budget for what it is. So I'm not worried about the budget. I'm not worried about necessarily the show from a directing standpoint, but I am with you of like how are they going to incorporate all of these elements. But at least the first step, Dom, they got the aesthetic. So as long as they
Mm-hmm.
continue with that, I'm excited to see where things go. And we got to have a dog companion in this too. We got to have a dog in this show.
I
Hopefully,
mean,
he doesn't get killed.
we literally need dog meat. I think that's a fair expectation. He's been in every game. I think, maybe not the earliest ones, but yeah, we need dog meat. Absolutely.
Wait, quick question. I'm gonna look this up. Is this an anthology show?
I don't know. Maybe I don't know if they've said. It's a good
I'm
question.
I'm looking at that real quick. Is the sorry if you can hear my typing. I'm unfortunate thing of looking up TV show on anthology. I can't remember. Hold on, I'm looking it up on the thing to see if they have any details about it. Wow, Todd Howard's executive producing the show. I did not know that.
Excuse me. That makes
Uh,
sense, and that's good to hear though. That he's doing that. Apparently, we
so I'm
saw
trying.
the Super Duper Mart in a different set of leaked photos, so I missed that, I guess,
Really, I did not see that.
according to this article I'm reading. So I'll have to
Oh,
find
I
that now.
see it. I see it. It's on the official wiki. Whoa, that looks cool. It's like the big picture where you can see like the sky at the top half of it. Is that photo you're talking about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'm just trying to see if they announce if it's going to be uh an anthology. It doesn't look like it. Which kind of makes sense because if they're announcing like Walter Goggins is starring in the show, it'd be weird to like how are you gonna have an anthology and say one person's star? Like it doesn't make sense really.
Yeah.
Uh,
Unless he was, in each episode, and the other cast rotated around him. Maybe could be.
yeah, or he could play a different character in different vaults or something, which
Yeah.
would be interesting as well. Because he is so much a character actor. Like you can disguise him in uh makeup and props and stuff where he can kind of hide into the role. You know what I mean? But who knows? We'll
Mm-hmm.
see. We've talked enough about that. Super excited, obviously. Dom and I love Fallout, and we can't wait to see how the show turns out. Next up, we got some new dates, Dom. A couple of them breaking, and one of them that happened, I think, the day after we recorded our Fantasy Critics League thing, where we were both like, "Yeah, Hogwarts Legacy has to be delayed, right?" Turns out, of course, it was. It was delayed to February 10th, so further muddying up that early release window for 2023. Which, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if we see a second slate of delays from those first 3 months into the summer time, just that way it becomes less crowded for people who want to compete. Hogwarts probably doesn't have to worry about moving. It's Harry Potter. Um, and honestly, I think I've come around on the idea of like, I'm not necessarily so against buying it and playing it, Dom. Because to some extent, it's like, I don't know. We've had a conversation about it. It's so hard and frustrating to think about, and it's like, do I want to give money to J.K. Rowling, but also do I want to reward these people for providing experience so many Harry Potter fans have wanted forever? And you know what I mean? It's one of those things of like, I feel bad for the developers, and it looks so amazing. So we'll see what happens. Planet of Lana, which is an indie game I was excited about, gives a lot of Ori and the Will of the Wisps vibes. As a 2D platformer, has been delayed to spring 2023. It featured a little kid on this planet like it was being invaded by an alien species, and it has a partner that's this like little circular black fuzzball thing. But the big announcement here is it's a bummer that it got delayed to spring 2023, but it's coming Game Pass day one. So strike
Oh,
another
cool.
positive for Game Pass, which is dope. This isn't on the news either, but it was announced today that Death Stranding is coming to PC Xbox Game Pass, which is wild that game is landing on Xbox. I was hoping it'd come to console, but I think that's a bridge too far. But still, super weird, considering how much that was attached to PlayStation. And lastly, a slight bummer, High on Life, which is a Squanch Games title from Justin Roiland and the creators of Rick and Morty. The game has been delayed from October to December 13th. Obviously, that's also an Xbox Day 1 Game Pass title. I'm kind of worried that this might slip again out of the year. I'm hoping they stick to that December 13th date, but we'll see what happens. Next, sales. You have some sales news. As of June 30th, 2022, Dom, Elden Ring has shipped 16.6 million copies.
Yeah, it's wild.
Once again, we did our spoiler cast on Elden Ring. Please catch that. We released it a couple of weeks ago. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on the podcast feed. We talk about all of our favorite aspects of the game, what we think it could have corrected, what we want from DLC and the sequel, all of that good stuff. But yeah, there's no shock, right? This is, I think, the only game that has a. Hold on, before I correct my. Outside of Call of Duty and Madden and like the sports titles, the only game that has a chance to outsell this is God of War, right?
Yeah, and even that will be tough just because it's so late.
And it's not multi-platform.
And it's not multi-platform. It could, in fact, I feel like it's likely to outsell it overall, like lifetime.
Well, I'm talking about this year. Like, I
Yeah,
don't
but
think it
this
has
year,
a chance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's gonna be a tough order, especially in only 2 months, and that's like also assuming it doesn't get delayed again itself.
I'm interested to see something. Hold on. Do me a favor and talk about I don't know, something related to Elden Ring while I look this up real quick.
Something
Maybe
related
tell
to
people
Elden
about
Ring.
our spoiler cast and why they should listen to it.
You should listen to it because it's I don't know, a fun conversation about who we thought the coolest bosses were, of which there's an obvious choice, and what kind of weapons and builds we used, highs and lows on the games. Of course, it's mostly highs, but we're not afraid to nitpick either the things that we thought maybe could be a bit better. Um, Also, that is tough to do because overall enjoyment of Elden Ring was just through the roof. Um, yeah, we're sure to mention Alexander Potboy, your favorite ceramic friend. I don't know. It was a good time, and I look forward to um another show where we can do a more in depth look at a single game like that, where we both have pretty intimate knowledge and experience with it. And
Okay,
so
I found the answer I
maybe,
was looking for.
and let me guess what you were looking up. Were you looking up the sales numbers for God of War 1?
And Dark Souls 3.
Ah, good call.
So I was intrigued. The Dark Souls 3 as of 2020 sold 10 million copies. I
Hmm.
would say a safe estimate is to add another maybe 2 million copies on the end of that now that we're in 2022. So safely 12 million, I would say, on the low end. God of War, the first one, sold 19.5 million copies.
Hmm.
And that's on a PlayStation 4 console base that currently sits at 117 million consoles total sold.
Which is a good thing to point out because Ragnarok also coming out on PS4.
I completely forgot about that. Yeah, so I was gonna have a counterpoint of if PS5s aren't selling the way PS4s are because of obviously supply constraints. But then yeah, it's also coming out on PS4, so that makes my argument null and void. Also considering that it's the time in which God of War Ragnarok is releasing, people are kind of thirsty for a new game. Like the AAA scene
Hmm.
hasn't been that fulfilling this year because of all the delays. So
Yeah, I mean, you
people
just pointed out
also
several new delays even this past week.
exactly. Like its only real competition is outside of like I said, Call of Duty and the sports titles is like what Gotham Knights. Am I
Yeah,
missing anything?
which is even like a month or two earlier, or a month earlier. So like,
And if it wasn't
you know,
Batman, I wouldn't even put it near. But because it's Batman, you never know how that could sell. Obviously, but
plus
who
like
knows?
there's something we've talked about that game so much. It needs to get here, and so we can like, just get over with whatever it's going to be. But it doesn't. Something I never thought about is like it doesn't have Batman in the title, which I think is a big deal.
But
Um,
he is all over the
for
marketing.
marketing. So he's like included in images and whatever.
Almost all of them talk about Bruce Wayne dying. Yeah,
Okay, that was probably part of the part of
that's a
the deal
smart
here. Is
move.
we're not gonna. They had to talk someone into just calling it Gotham Knights instead of, because even the other games were oh shoot, oh man, were they called Batman Arkham Knight Arkham Asylum, or were they just
I'm
called
gonna look that
Arkham?
up real quick while you
Oh
continue.
man, this might be the biggest foot and mouth moment of the episode. Certainly not of the week, but because that, not that it's unclear that those games were Batman games, but I think there's something to be said about, from your marketing team's perspective, they might want
So
Batman
the
in the
official.
title, right?
So you know how with Star Wars Jedi, the franchise is Star Wars Jedi, right? And then they
Yeah.
add the word. For this, the franchise is Batman Arkham.
Okay.
And they just add, so it's Batman Arkham Asylum, City Origins Night.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because it's an interesting proposition to say, like, we're gonna make a game in the Batman universe, but we're not gonna include his name in the title. And when you're trying to sell games, that might be a tough one to convince the marketing team of.
Well, especially when you have arguably the most popular superhero in the world, right?
Exactly. Like, so it does make sense then why they're sure to include a mention, in some of that. And of course, like, we don't know, but come on, is he dead? Are we not going to see him in this entire game? We'll see.
Well, they recently came out and said that he's dead at the beginning of the game and at the end of the game, or something like that. Which is like,
It's almost
is
weirder
it like the
that they
entity,
specify.
like the presence of Batman is dead? Are they going to revive him in the middle of the game just to actually kill him at the end of the game? Who knows? But we'll see
Or
what
is it
happens.
kind of like the Joker in Arkham Knight? Spoilers for Arkham Knight. who is dead, very dead, but is featured prominently in that game because how can you not? Yeah, you have Mark Hamill and like he's all over that game in a non-physical sense, I guess.
Yeah, and like I said too, it could be a thematic thing of the Batman is dead, but it's like Bruce Wayne maybe retiring from it or
Good
something.
call.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Next up, let's talk about Embracer Group buying everything. So this came out on the evening of August 17th, like at 8 p.m. Mountain Time, which was like obviously 10 p.m. Eastern Time. This was like towards the coming tonight. Just randomly, the Swedish media holding company and video game publisher Embracer Group announced a slew of purchases. They vary in both notoriety and value. Here's a list of some of the acquisitions. This doesn't include some of the smaller developers or like technology companies that they got. I kind of picked the most relevant or interesting ones of the group. So the first one is Singtrix, which is a karaoke machine and microphone system, which is a very odd thing, but based on the fact that it's a Swedish company, karaoke is pretty big in Europe and Asia. Not so much in North America. We do have karaoke bars and stuff, but it isn't the same, so that makes sense. Next up is Tuxedo Labs. Does that name sound familiar to you, Dom?
No.
Back at Gamescom 2020, they showed off this game called Teardown, which was like a pixel heist game where you could go and attack a heist mission the way you wanted to by exploding buildings, and it's a voxel pixel look to it. It's very unique in the way it looks, and it kind of caught the eyes of a bunch of people. Jeff Keighley came out and said, "Oh, it's developed by a couple of people," and it was incredible looking. Basically, that's the indie dev working on that game, so they purchased them. It is a Swedish developer. Makes sense for the Swedish company. Next up, this is a company I didn't know about. This is Tatsujin, which is a new Japanese studio led by a man named Masahiro Yuji, who is famed for co-founding the arcade game developer Toplan, which I guess is home to a bunch of very beloved old-school Japanese arcade games. So, though that isn't relevant to us, it seems like a pretty big deal, and it's Embracer Group's first Japanese purchase, which is also an important detail. Next up, limited run games. If you follow the game space at all, especially on social media, you should be familiar with limited run games because they're known for releasing limited edition runs, physical limited edition runs of digital indie games, or they also do special editions for smaller titles. Somebody mentioned this on Twitter. Sorry, I can't remember who it was. They said that this purchase was interesting because Embracer Group is known for doing these very crazy limited editions for their games, Dom, where like they do Battle for Bikini Bottom rehydrated. It's this like 3-foot statue of SpongeBob and all this stuff, and it's because they tend to. I'm assuming they'd lose money on that stuff, or it just isn't worth it in the end. Limited run games seems like the type of company that work best for the level of releases Embracer Group does, because they don't necessarily release like AAA after AAA. It's much more AA and smaller budget titles. So getting with the company and owning the company that does the physical and special edition runs of those type of games the best, at least in my opinion, makes sense, right?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a little hesitant with Embracer as a whole. But yeah, I've been following limited run games, and I think it's super cool what they do, where like, obviously physical copies of games that otherwise didn't get them or haven't in, years or decades or whatever it is. I didn't realize about the statues though, or the and all that stuff you're mentioning. So like they're cool as hell. So if Embracer can only continues to, enable them to do more of what they're doing, then that's awesome. I have like, always a tinge of fear when companies get taken over by big groups and stuff like that of how they'll change, if it's for the worse or whatever it is. But yeah.
Well, especially companies like Embracer Group that aren't, they're more nebulous, right, in their approach to things.
Very.
Which is, we talk about, yeah, and with companies like Sony and Microsoft can get scary because they're such big, powerful companies. Sorry, I swallowed a bug apparently or something.
Like that guy.
But when it comes to this is a tough pill to swallow, Embracer Group buying all these things. When it comes to Embracer Group, it's scarier because at least those other companies would kind of have an idea of what they plan to do with something they acquire, right?
Mm-hmm.
With Embracer Group, it's like Embracer Group can disappear tomorrow, and then what happens to everything they own? they're not something released by Google, so they probably won't disappear tomorrow. But yeah, it's especially with the thing we're gonna come up to later, which has me both excited and worried. But next up, we have Tripwire Interactive. Now, this is a developer that maybe the common video game player might not recognize, but they're responsible for some really big hits, Dom, especially in the PC space. So, Tripwire Interactive, does that name ring a bell to you or no?
Not at all.
So, they've developed Deceive Incorporated, The Killing Floor 1 and 2, which are really popular, Maneater, the shark game, the shark simulator game,
Yeah.
and Chivalry 2, which is like huge on PC.
Yeah.
Which is the physics-based medieval combat game. I think that's one of those purchases that most people will glance over, but for Embracer, I think it does add a bit of validity to their stable of developers because it is a studio with hits and it is stuff that they can lean into. And maybe for those communities too, limited run games, that purchase, maybe they do release something physical for Chivalry 2 or Maneater that those fans want, and it's in a limited capacity so it doesn't financially handicap Embracer, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's another
Now,
interesting one.
Yeah. Let me get a swig of water real quick. That
Cheers.
pill of Embracer Group got lodged in my throat. Next up, this is the big one. Middle Earth Enterprises. This came out of nowhere. This was like, whoa. So, this means that they own the full IP rights to The Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit when it comes to specifically movies, television, video games, board games, merchandising, theme parks, and some other minor things. But it doesn't include the book rights. That's a big thing to note there. And the rumors suggest, because none of these prices for these, which we'll get into in the next point, which is important, none of the purchase prices were revealed yet, which will probably happen at Embracer Group's next stockholder meeting or shareholder meeting. The rumored price for Middle Earth Enterprises was $2 billion, which in my opinion seems like a steal for that IP, based on everything you can do. Now, I would be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit worried because I would much rather them be owned by somebody else outside of Embracer Group. But what wasn't it a couple of weeks ago, Dom, that we were talking about where's our AAA Lord of the Rings? Where are our Lord of the Rings games? We're not getting any. The only thing we have is that weird, ugly Gollum game, and obviously the Shadow of games. But outside of that, like, where's our Lord of the Rings games, right? So it's like seems like a monkey's paw situation, honestly.
And like, so this includes, movies and future movies or shows, or
Yeah, they own the rights now to the show that's coming out in a couple of weeks.
okay, so Amazon is making that show, but now Embracer owns the rights to them making it, basically, and that's
Yeah, so basically the contract that whoever held it signed with Amazon, now Embracer owns that contract essentially. Yeah.
Okay, so that's I think you're right. That is a steal. Even thinking back to 2014 when Star Wars got bought by Disney for like $6 billion, and that obviously turned out to be a steal. Arguably bigger IP there, but even still, that was also almost a decade ago. And the price of these things, that just seems to go rapidly, up over time too. So I think you're right. Like that's a big steal, especially if they capitalize on it, because also we haven't been getting, as much Lord of the Rings stuff as we could be. That franchise has not been, I'll say, used to the extent it could be. Others might say like, it's not been exploited as much as it could be either. So I guess that's a perspective. But yeah, we could at least get some games, right? This show should be cool. Who knows? I mean, it's another one. Like, if this is a good change and this enables, they can give some developers some IP to make some Lord of the Rings games, or get some other stuff out of it, then this should be great, assuming they're of a decent quality. But it's kind of been dormant a little bit, I feel.
I did some research into the Tolkien estate, and they were kind of a nightmare to deal with when it came to like publishing rights and stuff.
Okay.
So my hope is that kind of loosens the levy on what exactly can use the license. Obviously, I don't want it to be all loosey-goosey, but from what I've read, assumedly, the Tolkien estate was like notoriously difficult to work with. Okay. So I kind of understand. That's why like Shadow of can't use the main timeline. It's like its own. I mean, it used all that weird stuff, right? Where like War of the North also couldn't use all that weird IP stuff where it's like contractually and legally you can't use this, but you can use this. So hopefully things work out. Worst case scenario, the hope here in a worst case scenario state is that if Embracer folds, that'll probably be the first IP they try to sell to make up their losses, right? And
Sure.
that'll be a hot commodity for people. So, and just to put in perspective, Disney bought Marvel for $4 billion as well, which is like nothing.
Oh man,
That's
yeah, that's a
crazy.
steal. That's robbery.
Well, to put it in perspective, do you remember how much they bought 21st Century Fox for?
Oh, because that wasn't that long ago. Because that's like with X-Men and everything, right?
Yeah, that was 71 billion.
Holy crap! What?
Yeah, but you also have to imagine that includes like Hulu and Alien and Predator and National Geographic
This
and
doesn't even make sense. Money is made
a,
up. Whatever.
yeah, money is made up. Like
That's
Marvel
so
and
much.
Star Wars were a steal at those prices,
Yeah.
and Lord of the Rings is also a steal at this price. It's crazy. Um, the last thing, did you see this last part about this other purchase they made? Very weird.
I don't think so.
So, quote, Embracer Group, this is all PR posts from Embracer Group, by the way, this last one. Quote, Embracer has entered into agreement to acquire another company within PC console gaming that, for commercial reasons, is not disclosed today. The purchase price for this undisclosed acquisition is in the range of being among either third or fourth largest of the transactions.
So out of everything they bought, this is the third or fourth largest.
Yeah, number one is obviously Middle Earth. Number two, based on everything we saw, is either limited run games or one of the weird tech things, because tech companies can be really expensive, right?
Mhm.
Based on the proprietary stuff that they accomplish. Yeah, so it's very weird. So obviously we're not talking about like they're not buying Ubisoft or EA or something
Right.
crazy, but
Something smaller.
they could buy like a Nordic or a Swedish game developer. Some people suggested CD Projekt Red, which wouldn't be
Nah, not for
too
that much.
shocking.
They would cost more than, I guess, what for third or fourth. I don't know. I guess it depends what the
We're
numbers
also
are.
not coming off of The Witcher. We're coming off of Cyberpunk, and you have to think about like public shares
True.
and stuff. I don't know where that company sits value wise now. You know what I mean?
And CD Projekt has like a deal worked out with the Witcher IP to make games, but they don't own that IP or anything like that,
Also,
as
I
far
think
as
a
I
lot of their
understand.
development costs are subsidized by the Polish government too, to some extent. So
Well, yeah, so that would make them pretty valuable. Yeah.
who knows? We'll see. Who knows what's gonna happen there? Next up, I wanted to talk about this thing that came out of nowhere. Dom, we're getting a Disney and Marvel games showcase,
Oh
which
man.
is
Yeah,
pretty
I saw
exciting.
this.
So a new gaming showcase focused on Disney and Marvel properties is set to take place on September 9th. It is being hosted by Kinda Funny's own and our friend Blessing Adeoye Jr., which is really
Which is
exciting.
incredibly cool, and that's from all sides of this. I was like, this is just the coolest thing in the world right now. Like, first of all, obviously, I'm super pumped for this event. We've been predicting and hoping for different Star Wars games to come out and different Marvel games to come out with different developers, yada yada. For the last couple of years at least, just between us. So hopefully we get a little bit of that out of this showcase, and then for Blessing to be this is cool. I'm so excited. I'm so excited for the showcase. I'm so happy for Blessing. This is awesome.
The crazy thing, the little fun fact about controlled interest and people who maybe may not know Blessing before Kinda Funny is he ran OK Beast. He was the first guest on our podcast. It was like episode
Yeah.
4 or 5, and I was the first guest on OK Beast.
Oh, really? Nice.
Yeah, because when you merged with Alex, they still kept the OK Beast name. Yeah, that's a very weird thing that happened. I'm so excited for him. It's gonna be dope. And it
Mhm.
seems like for the way he was talking about it on Kind of Funny, it's gonna be he's in person hosting, which is exciting. It's not like him at
Ooh.
his webcam. From what I
Right.
at least saw, who knows? Between the world changes every day, things could change between now and September 9th. So the official release statement for this says, quote, in addition to all new announcements, fans can expect new reveals from titles including Disney Dreamlight Valley, Marvel's Midnight Suns, Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, and a sneak peek at the upcoming Marvel Ensemble game from Skydance New Media. Now, I broke
Ooh.
this down into 3 sections, Dom. I broke this down into confirmed games, expected games, and speculative games. So we're going to go through this list one by one. So the confirmed games: Disney Dreamlight Valley, which is that weird game where you can like walk around a town with the Disney characters. I think it's partially VR or something. Whatever. Next up, Marvel's Midnight Suns, which recently got a delay. I'm excited to see more of that game. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Do you think it's DLC here or like character packs, or what do you think?
Because we just had obviously the Obi-Wan show, so maybe some character packs from that. We have Andor coming up, so maybe some character packs from that is like the obvious stuff. But quite frankly, they cover. I mean, maybe we'll get some levels from the Mandalorian or something.
I was just about to
DLC.
say that if they have Mandalorian DLC, ooh baby, that's gonna sell so well too.
That'd be cool. And obviously, there's a bunch of stuff that happens in that show across this couple seasons so far that you can easily see for some fun levels, some different types of things going on. So yeah, I'd be into that.
I want this to become like the hub for all the Star Wars Lego experiences. So like even if they manage to redo some of the other ones, like a Lego Rogue One would be dope too if that ever came to fruition. I'd be down with that. Next up, Marvel Ensemble game from Skydance New Media. Obviously, this is Amy Hennig's new game. Now, what is the ensemble cast of this game, Dom? Because obviously ensemble means it's a group of people, right? Now, it could be a ragtag, wink wink, group of superheroes. Obviously, for people who may not know, ragtag was the project name for a canceled Star Wars title. But it's gonna, in order for it to be a licensed Marvel game, it's probably gonna have some notoriety in terms of the name of the team. So here are some that I wrote up that from least likely to most likely. Okay, Dom? I'm not including Guardians of the Galaxy event or the Avengers because both of those games already exist, and I doubt that they'd license Amy Hennig to just do another game with that ensemble, right? Doesn't really make sense. First up, we have what I call the space ensemble casts, which are the Eternals and the Inhumans. Both probably not likely. Eternals would be exciting because they're essentially gods, and that'd be an interesting thing from a narrative perspective for Amy Hennig to handle. The Inhumans are kind of like in the doghouse for Marvel. We got the appearance of Black Bolt in the new Doctor Strange. Other than that, I don't know if they're ever going to touch Inhumans for a long time. It's like, why prioritize the Inhumans when you now have the mutants? Doesn't really make sense. Next up, we have the possibly, but could also be years away, which is X-Men or Fantastic Four. Both these totally plausible from a narrative standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, would be super exciting. I think, honestly, these are based on how far away the game is. I think if the game is still years away, I think these are much more likely. But if her game is coming out in the next 1 or 2 years, I think the likelihood on those two drops dramatically. Because the way Marvel works is they don't want to necessarily push something that they haven't done yet. And obviously they lead with the MCU, and I don't know if they want to tackle X-Men and Fantastic Four properly before it's closer to when their live action debuts happen for the company.
That was the only thing I had thought of, speculative. I don't know Marvel, and its cast with as much knowledge as you have, right? But that was what I thought it was. Well, Fantastic Four, X-Men. That was kind of the only things that came to mind as far as, obviously outside of Guardians and the Avengers. So, but
they would definitely be the most exciting, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I get what you're saying though with X-Men because, obviously like we've been wanting them integrated better into the MCU and maybe more movies, or I don't know all the details around that, how that would work, but I feel like, it would be odd for that to start with a big video game to me. I don't know, but I guess it's possible.
Especially with another game we'll get to later starring one X-Men in particular, which we'll get to. Next up, I would say these are the most street level groups, meaning that from Amy Hennig's storytelling standpoint, it wouldn't be as much of a leap as going grand with superheroes or sci-fi and space and all of that. And that would be the Defenders, which includes Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Daredevil, even Moon Knight, that whole group, Punisher. And I think from a narrative perspective, that would be really good because the type of games she designs are very much adventure based, and I think that the Defenders lend themselves to that, which would be really exciting. I don't know, it'd be a fun ensemble, and they're known enough to where the marketing wouldn't be tough, but they're not super popular in that there's some creative license with them, which I think is really fun.
Hmm.
And the other one is Young Avengers, which also is pretty popular now, especially in the MCU with them introducing all of these Young Avengers, Miss Marvel, Kate Bishop, all of that. You can differentiate yourself enough from the main Avengers cast and have a younger group and do a coming of age thing because it's kind of a genre we haven't seen touched fully in the Marvel game space in recent years. You could kind of say Spider-Man and Miles Morales to some extent, but with a cast of characters, I think that's a totally different tone in terms of coming of age. Either of those you think are likely or possible at the very least?
I feel like the Defenders makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Because that, you know, as opposed to, well, I guess they technically weren't MCU. Even still, it's kind of like hazy, right? Obviously, we've had some
Well, now
people
Daredevil
cross
for
over,
sure
right?
is 100%.
Okay, Daredevil is, okay. So that feels more likely than X-Men for sure. And so where it's like from both, we're familiar enough with them. Like a lot of those shows got super popular. Daredevil for sure, and Jessica Jones and stuff. Um, like I feel like that got enough popularity to where it makes sense, but it's not so big of a thing that hasn't been touched at all by them, like X-Men. I feel like that feels cool, and I think that fits in better with what I can picture Amy Hennig having wanted to do. Um,
Yeah.
Compared to kind of like what you're saying, like, well, the Eternals are like, gods or whatever. That just feels very different. Granted, I have no, I don't, maybe that's what she wants to do, but it just feels like a better fit, maybe.
Well, and her track record seems to be she likes telling stories about people who are at their core good and altruistic, but not necessarily completely clean and devoid of guilt or sin or any of that stuff. Like she likes those
Mm-hmm.
gray characters very much so. And the Defenders can very much be gray characters. Like Daredevil kind of it's his whole shtick, right? His partnership with religion and how he deals with the violence he causes. And these last two groups fall into the ragtag, bounty hunter, bandit, bad guys doing good things type thing. The first one is Thunderbolts. Now, if you're not familiar with Thunderbolts, Thunderbolts are basically the Avengers comprised of a bunch of gray area people. It's the bad guy from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. It's the Abomination. It's Punisher. It's all of these people who technically try to do the good thing, but they're not good guys. And I think that totally fits in. It's the closest thing Marvel has to the Suicide Squad. I think it's the easiest comparison to make. And I think that fits right in line, especially with the Thunderbolts movie already being announced and scheduled for MCU. I think that's something I think that Amy Hennig and her crew can nail, Thunderbolts. Um, and it's a cool name. I think they can pitch that and market it really well. And I do think people, it fit in terms of releasing a superhero game where you're not playing as the goody two shoes, which I think could excite people. You're not playing as the good guy necessarily. And the other one is X Force, which is Cable and Deadpool and Domino, that group of people. I don't really have to explain. By this point, everyone knows who Deadpool is and his personality. And that adds a little bit more sci-fi flair, more so than Thunderbolts. But I do think it's enough a-holes on that roster that she can make it work. Those two are probably right below X-Men and Fantastic Four for what I'd be most excited for from her and her team.
Okay, interesting. I'm always learning about new Marvel people.
Yeah.
Yeah, some of the deeper cut MCU, Marvel characters, and apparently groups too. So
Did you
yeah, this
have
is
you not seen
curious.
Deadpool 2?
I've not watched either of the Deadpool movies.
Really good. They're very funny. You would like them. And yeah, Thunderbolts, like I said, is already scheduled, so that's going to be in the MCU too. So we'll see what happens there. Next up, expected games. So these are games that could totally show up. They're not confirmed, but we pretty sure that they are going to some extent. First one, Star Wars Jedi Survivor, which Jeff Grubb as of today said it's coming out in March alongside the book that takes place between the first and second game.
There's a
How do you,
book. Shoot.
yeah, it's Star Wars Jedi. It's written by Sam Meggs, who's a writer I really enjoy. Um, yeah, what do you think? Is this showing up? Not confirmed, but pretty safe, especially if it's coming out in March.
It seems like it should, right? We're what 6 months away? What March? We're in August. So
For seven, we're 7
7 months.
months away. So it could totally do the
Um,
Game Awards thing, technically.
yeah, and it's. I think this. I think it makes sense because it'll still get shown probably at the Game Awards and probably one other place too with a different trailer. Probably this is gonna get a ton of exposure, and then in the lead up here in the next 7 months. So I could see that, and I think it would really bring a lot of credibility to this showcase in general. Of like,
For sure.
like this is the first time we're doing this, and it's serious, right? So I think it makes a lot of sense to see that here.
Next up, Star Wars Hunters, which is the Overwatchy Switch multiplayer game. That'll probably be there too. Not really excited for that. I don't know how much to add there. I don't know if you have anything to add.
No, I know. I did see it got delayed. I think it was gonna be free to play, so like I'll download it and mess around with it. Although I guess I probably won't if it's multiplayer only, because I don't even pay for the Switch Online because you have to pay for it, which is wild, apparently. So if that's the case, I won't.
Next up, this is how would I phrase this? This is the most unlikely of the likely games, if that makes sense. Avatar: Frontiers of Pandora, which is Ubisoft's Avatar game.
It's a good point because that is their property. It's Disney.
Yep. And that movie is coming out. Is it this fall that Avatar 2 is coming out? I think so.
I don't know.
Yeah, so that makes sense. Now these are next batch is speculative games. So I have this broken up into non-Star Wars or Marvel, then Star Wars, then Marvel. Okay, so it's 3 different groups. So out of the speculative games, we have Kingdom Hearts 4.
I didn't even think of that. That feels.
You also
less...
think about the partnership between Square Enix and Disney is also pretty close.
Yes, I guess I could see it. I hadn't thought about that though. That's interesting. That would be cool. I'm still kind of like 3 was like so. All right, I guess. So I'm not super excited for 4. And then we saw a little bit in that trailer from however many months ago, and it felt odd. Sora in a city. It's very Mario Odyssey, but it didn't work as well from that trailer at least. But
felt way less Disney, unfortunately, for me, anyways.
Yeah, but maybe I could see that. I forgot about that game entirely.
Next up, Machine Games Indiana Jones title.
That's a good point too. I didn't think of that because they own Indiana Jones then,
Lucasfilm.
Right?
Yep.
Interesting. Which you would naturally think, well, at the next Xbox thing, you'd see more of that, but. They have so much to work with that they could show.
That's what makes this exciting.
Oh,
yeah.
Man. There's so
and I'm
much
not even full through list. We haven't even touched Marvel or Star Wars yet.
Yeah. I mean, that makes sense too. I could definitely see that.
Now for the wet fart, which is Aliens Dark Descent, which is that game that was unveiled at Summer Game Fest. The like over the top shoot 'em up game. Whatever.
Okay.
But remember, Disney owns Aliens, so it is what it is. Next up, this is a Star Wars section. The open world Star Wars game from Ubisoft.
Of course. I mean,
yes.
If not now, when? Who knows how
Ubisoft
long
needs a win, so they should show something here. Whether it's Avatar or this, just show something.
Ubisoft does need a win.
Star Wars Eclipse from Quantic Dream.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe.
Respawn's FPS game, Star Wars FPS game.
That would be great. I'm so hyped. I'm excited for that, almost as much as I mean, obviously we know nothing about it, but except that it's a first-person shooter. So in theory, I'm super excited. And Respawn's doing it, so that would be awesome to see what they got going on there.
My prediction would be that we see Jedi Survivor here, and then during Game Awards, towards the beginning of the show, we see another Jedi Survivor trailer, right? Like a launch trailer type thing. And then at the end of the show thing is, oh, by the way, Respawn wanted to show another Star Wars game. And it's the trailer for this. Would be sick. The reveal trailer for this. Next up, we got the Marvel section. Marvel Spider-Man 2 from Insomniac.
Mm-hmm.
This, speaking of adding credibility to the show, this would be great if we saw this.
And Insomniac has been consistently shocking us with how quickly they're able to make games. So it wouldn't surprise me if not only does this pop up and then they're like, yeah. Or actually, they already said 2023 for this game, right?
Yeah, and PlayStation rarely does a thing where they don't have the breadcrumb in front of the breadcrumb you're currently eating. Mm-hmm. And by that I mean, like when Horizon was coming out, we knew God of War was on the horizon, pun intended. and we don't really have the thing that's next, right? Because Ratchet's out,
Yeah.
Horizon's out.
So
So
they
I
might
think with
say a date, maybe March or something like that even.
yeah, maybe, but even then, I just think you need something for people to be excited about because this will be a couple of months from God of War. You need to start building hype towards the next thing as well. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think once they're able to lock in the God of War date and make sure it doesn't delay, maybe that's when they get more comfortable with pushing Spider-Man 2. We'll see. Next up, Marvel's Wolverine, which we talked about the X-Men earlier. I don't think we see any mention of an X-Men game until this game is closer to release, because then it's like, what's the point? Unless it's an X-Men game focused on everybody but Wolverine, which I would enjoy, because one of the biggest criticisms with the original X-Men trilogy of films, Dom, is that they were Wolverine movies that featured the X-Men. You know what I mean? They
Okay.
weren't X-Men movies. It's Wolverine and his pals. And I think it would be pretty dope of Marvel to greenlight an X-Men game that doesn't feature Wolverine and features Cyclops and Jean Grey and Storm and Professor X and Beast, and build it that way, and then you have your Wolverine game with Logan running his own show on his own, you know? I think that's how I would do it anyways, but we'll see. The next two, Dom, are rumored EA games from by Jeff Grubb, and they're both from EA. Black Panther and
Oh
Iron
yep.
Man.
Mm-hmm.
The Iron Man game, I mean, if they use the tech they did for Anthem, I can't wait to see what that looks like, because obviously when Anthem came out, despite all of its issues, it was the closest to an Iron Man game we've ever gotten. The way those suits worked was so sick. The Black Panther game, there's so much more details about this. If you're going to be taking on the role of the Black Panther, I don't know if you saw the recent Wakanda Forever trailer, Dom. That trailer is super emotional. It's arguably my favorite Marvel movie trailer outside of maybe Endgame. Black Panther holds a special place in many people's hearts. It's a character that deserves its own video game. We often talk about representation in video games, and Black Panther did that for film finally, for a whole community of people who wanted to see themselves as a superhero on the big screen. And it's about time we get a AAA Black Panther game, right?
Yeah, and it's supposed to be an open world game too, right? And yeah, there's obviously a lot of potential there, and this could be cool. I look forward to seeing more about that game.
Just going over that list, there's so much Disney and
Yes, so
Marvel can
much.
show that it's exciting. And honestly, if they do it right, this could become one of those showcases every year or every other year, however they often they decide to do it. That
Mm-hmm.
could be a mainstay. My dream would be if they did it a little bit closer to in June and July. I would really be excited for that. But with D23 D Plus Day coming up, it makes sense that they'd kind of put those things together to really get people excited for the future of their entertainment with video games and then all the other stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
really exciting. Anyways, I guess before we get into closing out the show and what we've been playing and all that stuff, what would be if you could be like, I want to see this? If you could pick one thing from their catalog that you want to be at that showcase, what would it be?
Um, I want to see the Ubisoft Star Wars game. That's still like we know we know who's doing it, and we know it should be big. And we've not heard very much from Ubisoft at all lately. I just want to see more of that. I'm probably still like most excited for Jedi Survivor because the first game was so good, and that one's coming soon. But I just want to see this Ubisoft game so badly. Like, what is it? What I don't know. That's if I could pick anything to guarantee, like that's what I want to see more of.
So obviously, to no one's surprise, Dom picked a Star Wars game, and I'm gonna pick a Marvel game, which is as expected. But my thought process is the same. So obviously with Jedi Survivor, you're excited for it, but it's more of a known quantity, and you want to see the
Yeah,
unknown. For
exactly.
me, I could do the same thing. Marvel Spider-Man 2 to me is a known quantity. Like I kind of know what that's going
Hmm.
to be, and I'm excited to see it. But I want to see that Black Panther game. Like I want,
Yeah.
it's an open world game. Like I want to see what that is. Which is funny because we both picked the open world game over the sequel to the thing we already love. But it's like those are much more likely to appear. You know what I mean? So it's like I want to, like you did, I want to pick the thing that's probably unlikely to show up, and
Yeah.
hopefully we'll see it. We'll see what happens. In terms of what we've been playing, I've hopped into Cult of the Lamb, but I'm gonna save a lot of my thoughts until Dom hops into it, because what's the point? Other than that, I'm playing Madden 23 like the clown I am. Every year I pick it up and I play it. It's not as bad as people talk about on the internet. It's certainly not a great game either. Especially with me playing MLB The Show the last couple of years through Game Pass. The level of quality and what they deliver to the audience. It's such a shame because the NFL is the most profitable professional sports organization on the planet, and they have the worst simulation license title out of any sport. And people might
That is
be
a
like,
bummer
"Oh,
when
but
you put it like that.
but soccer isn't soccer profitable?" Well, collectively, if you take all like the 17 professional leagues in the world, yes, but each of them are individual. There's like the Premier League and then La Liga, and the funniest one to me is the German league, which is called Bundesliga, which is obviously it's just a German word, but it's so funny to me because I'm a dumb American and I just love the way it sounds Bundesliga. But yeah, it's a shame. Fans deserve better. I can't wait for college football returning next spring.
Oh,
Hopefully,
me
fingers
too.
crossed. Um, Other than that, it's same old, same old. The one thing I want to say, non-video game, is go watch Prey on Hulu. I'm not a Predator fan. I've never really watched or engaged with any of the Predator films. I'm not a big fan of those. But Prey on Hulu is a phenomenal film. For those who don't know, the pitch is imagine if Predator landed on Earth in the 1700s near an indigenous tribe, and this daughter and her brother have to fight the Predator off. It's really good, like really good.
Yeah, I've been hearing that this is good, and I'm I've never watched anything in this franchise, but apparently yeah, like doesn't matter. So
You don't
I
need
have to
to. I
have to
had
try this
no
out.
touchstone outside of like knowing Arnold Schwarzenegger was in it and what the Predator looks like, Dom. Like the things you inherit through just pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
Phenomenal film. I was not lost. It was so engaging, so good. It has a dog in the movie as her companion, which is also a plus one.
We like dogs.
And one of the things, this isn't a spoiler for the movie, one of the thematic things it does, which I love, is that obviously the movie is a Predator franchise movie, but thematically it also showcases the Predators, aka the colonists, because the colonists play a role in this movie too, like European
Okay.
colonists.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. One thing I didn't experience because I can't speak Comanche, but the entire film is also watchable in Comanche, which is the indigenous language of the people featured in the movie, which is a super nice
Oh,
touch too that they didn't need to do. So
very cool.
yeah, it's on Hulu. The reason it came out on Hulu and not in theaters is because when Disney bought Fox, if they put this movie in theaters, then it would have went to HBO Max instead of
Oh,
Disney Plus.
okay.
So they're just like, we're just gonna put it on Hulu then. And you know how HBO Max is, so thank God that didn't happen. Anyways, that's it for me. What about you?
So I entirely finished Doom Eternal, and
Damn.
it wasn't too long actually, but it was an absolute blast, and it just I was just in the mood for that. I wanted to just run around at ridiculous speeds as a ridiculously powerful character called Doom Guy, just absolutely slaughtering demons in various weird environments. I was kind of really pleased with all the different platforming they added in this one compared to the previous game. Some people kind of didn't like that. Like, it's certainly, I think it was a perfect, like, here's a thing to break up the monotony that can start to happen of just the first person shooter stuff. It was, here's some cool new platforming that is actually kind of difficult at times, and some nice puzzles thrown in there too. That I thought it was really well balanced the way they incorporated all that, and also like some of the environments were really different than kind of the stuff we saw over and over in the first game too. So I really liked Doom Eternal. It was a heck of a lot of fun and very hard too. I kind of forgot. I ended up
You want to
playing it
hear of
on easy mode.
a terrible thing?
Hmm.
I bought Doom Eternal at launch with all of the DLC included, and I haven't touched it yet.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it was just a
What did it
donation.
come out near? I bought it and then something else came out, and then I just never. It's one of those things, where like
Mm-hmm.
it just you get lost in the sauce of another game, and then it just falls in the backlog, and then you never get to it. I'm gonna look that
But
up real
yeah,
quick.
I'm still I still have like a trial of Game Pass, so I'm gonna run through as many Game Pass games as I can while that's still going on. And
Have you
then
played Unpacking yet?
no, I do have it downloaded, and that's one on the list. I found a different game called Unsighted that really I only just barely started it, but kind of it reminds me a lot of Hyper Light Drifter, the kind of the aesthetic it has.
I have it downloaded. Haven't gone to it yet. I heard good things about it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's looking like I'm gonna keep going with that next, and then Inside is back on Game Pass, so I think it'll finally be time to where I play Inside.
Yes. The other one I wanted to
yeah.
recommend is Citizen Sleeper. So Citizen Sleeper is a cyberpunk game, but it's a narrative-focused game. That being said, I don't know if you're going to like it because it's a lot of text reading. It's not a visual novel. There is gameplay involved of like puzzle solving and moving your character around and doing stuff. But it is a lot of reading. It's very good though. And it's one of those things with Game Pass where if it wasn't on Game Pass, I think it'd have a hard time pitching to you of spending your money on it. But I would suggest you downloading it, Dom. And if you have time to eventually get to it, check it out. Like I said, might not be for you. Totally get it. But the sci-fi world it builds in there is really cool. It's unlike anything I've played in terms of the setup of the game. Very interesting.
All right, Citizen Sleeper. But yeah, that's what I played for games. I do have to shout out on Apple TV Plus, which is like a chore of a streaming service that also exists. But anyway, I started watching on that service a show called Mythic Quest, which is
The Ubisoft show.
Yeah, I don't really understand that. But anyway, it's like produced by Rob McElhenney from It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia and Charlie Day as well. And then Rob also stars in the show, but it's basically a workplace comedy, except it's a game developer. That's the workplace, and they have this huge MMO, and it's super dysfunctional and all sorts of shenanigans like that. And it's it's not like accurate to what I assume a developer looks like in reality, but they do, very relatable, and a lot of the stuff that they tackle, and even like some of the issues that we talk about with that game studios have and things like that, they tackle from a comedic lens, obviously. And I don't know, it's been super funny. And
Ashley Birch is in it, right?
Yes, yeah, she's one of the characters there. She's pretty good.
Hell yeah. It's one of those shows that I've wanted to watch, and obviously anything made by anybody attached to Always Sunny is going to be intriguing. Yeah. There's a couple of shows like that on Apple Plus. Like, I want to watch Ted Lasso. I want to watch that. Mm-hmm. What's the workplace mystery show that recently came out that people like?
Yeah, Severance maybe.
Severance, yeah. Honestly, even that show with Jason Momoa looks interesting. That C, where it's like a blind tribe or whatever.
Yeah, that's a cool concept. I'm debating on trying that out too. They have a lot of shows popping up on this app.
Well, and all of their stuff has high production value, regardless of how good it actually is. All of their shows look the part. Yeah. By the way, I looked it up, and boy howdy, no wonder Doom Eternal got lost. You ready for this?
Oh yeah, let's go.
So in March of 2020, this is when Doom Eternal came out. Call of Duty Warzone came out on March 10th, which was huge for me. I got lost in Call of Duty Warzone. March 11th, Ori and the Will of the Wisps came out.
Sure.
And Animal Crossing on Switch came out.
Yeah, because this is like at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah.
That's marked for me by Animal Crossing, among other things.
And State of Decay 2 came out, which I also played. Dude, Half-Life Alyx came out.
Really?
Neo 2? Oh my god, this month is ridiculous. The Division 2? Oh, that was on Stadia, never mind. Yeah, this month is crazy. Persona 5 Royale came out. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Campaign Remastered. Yeah, no wonder I didn't get to Doom Eternal. Sorry, Doom Eternal. I need to show its respect. I want to play that by the end of the year. Oh, and then, shout out Better Call Saul, right? Series finale.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So that series ended, and it's bittersweet. Really well done ending. Vince Gilligan and Peter Gould keep showing that they really do a great job at ending series, because a show is hard to end. Even the best shows sometimes struggle with their endings. It's really tough to get right. I think
Game of Thrones.
I think they did it again here. Really well done. And just how the same as that feeling of when the show is done, you feel kind of bittersweet. The ending itself is bittersweet, where it's very satisfying, but also there's parts of it that are just tough to swallow, but but still good. So really well done. That show was just phenomenal. Probably that and Breaking Bad, I definitely decided until I decide something else randomly or remember something. Top 2 TV shows for me, just hands down, just in general. Absolutely adore both of them, and they're tied for that. I have not distinguished. So,
Didn't he recently sign a deal to create a new show?
yeah,
Like it was a big deal. Like I forgot what company it was with, but they're like, yeah, once Better Call Saul is done, we want you to make us a show.
I know
Which
he's
isn't
doing some
surprising,
vampire show,
obviously.
but I'm not sure what else.
You know what's weird too? I haven't been able to get to. I shouldn't say I haven't been able to. I definitely have. I haven't focused on getting to Better Call Saul yet. But now that it's over, I'm actually more intrigued to start it up and get through it. It's like that pressure of I want to experience the story before it's spoiled for me, and the fact that it's actually done now makes that more intriguing to me than before. If that makes sense.
So if it stays on the same cadence, like this last season will hit Netflix sometime next year, right? But otherwise, this last season that just aired will be tough to watch unless you can get it unless you subscribe to like some AMC service they probably have or whatever.
Well, I could also probably DVR it on YouTube TV, probably.
Oh, yeah, that'd probably work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll figure it out. If there's a will, there's a way. I'll get it to work. Honestly, I wouldn't even be beyond if by that point, if I can watch most of the show and then the only thing I'd have to do is buy the final season, like to watch it, I'd be down.
Bad.
Give it like $20-$30. You know what I mean?
Because if
pay
you
for the
watched
things
it
you enjoy
through the first 5 and it's as good as I'm telling you it is, then you'll be very motivated to watch the last season.
Exactly. And I'd very much trust your opinion. So I think that's pretty much it for this week's show. Next week we'll probably be talking about what happened at Gamescom. I doubt it'll be any major announcements. There's the whole Dead Island 2 thing. Did you see that?
Yeah.
Or apparently that's going to be revealed, which is very weird. Not even taking place on an island, which is odd. I guess if you think about it hard enough, a continent could be considered an island, just a very large one, I guess. Well, no, because I think continents actually connect to the core of the Earth, right? They're not floating. Islands are floating. I don't think islands actually connect to the ocean floor.
That's
right?
a good point. I guess I didn't know that continents were. I think islands typically are not. I don't know.
Here, I'm going to Google this real quick before we end the show. Why aren't continents islands? Yep, I knew it was going to be a top search result. An island is a body of land surrounded by water. Continents are also surrounded by water, but because they are so big, they're not considered islands. Okay, then never mind. My thought process made sense, though, right?
Yeah,
like you would assume that the continent, but I guess they wouldn't be fully connected because of there was Pangea and then they separated, but that could be just a shifting of tectonic plates. Whatever, that's your science for the week. Thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you guys next week with episode 253 covering Gamescom and everything else that happens. Maybe some more games will be delayed. Maybe some games will be leaked. Who knows? We'll see. See you guys then.